So we're going to jump right into how a bill becomes a law, because if you want to know how to testify, you have to know where to testify and at what point is the most effective way to do that. So the first thing that happens when a bill is going through the legislative process is that it's introduced and numbered. And what that means is that any representative, so a legislator from the House of Representatives or a senator, which is a legislator from the Senate, can introduce a bill in their respective chamber, and that bill gets a number. After that bill is introduced and it's numbered, that bill is referred to a committee. So the Speaker of the House or the Senate president will refer the bill to the legislative committee that appears to be the most appropriate for the content of that bill. And that just means that that's the area, that's the legislative group that that bill is going to be going through hearings through. The third thing that happens is that after the bill is assigned to a committee, the committee is going to meet and they're going to consider the bill. So the committee hearing agendas are posted in advance. They can be found on the Rhode Island General Assembly website. I'll show you how to find those when we go through the General Assembly website a little bit later. And these hearings are open to the public, and this is where public testimony is taken. But currently, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, these committee hearings are hybrid. They allow for the providing of testimony both in person and through the phone. It's really convenient. If you're going to provide testimony through the phone, you have to sign up the day before 4 p.m. But if you're going to sign up in person, you can just go to the committee hearing to the committee room that day, sign up before the committee, and then the committee chair will call you up when it's your turn to testify. Committees also take testimony in writing. I think this is a very effective way if maybe the hearings don't fit into your schedule, or it's a little difficult for you to navigate with work or other responsibilities. Written testimony is always really impactful. It's also posted on the legislative website. So if you need to access what other people are saying, or you want to access your own testimony later, you can find that through the committee pages. But there are quite a few options to provide testimony during the hearing process. So while the committee is hearing the bill, there are a few options for what they can do. The first one is that they can recommend the bill be passed as introduced. That, I would say, never happens. When you're hearing a bill for the first time, it rarely, if ever, is passed straight out of committee. The committee can also recommend the bill be passed with amendments. Again, this also happens very rarely, that a bill would be amended during the committee hearing and then passed out of committee. They can recommend that a substitute bill be passed. Again, on the first time that a bill is getting heard, very rare. They can recommend that the bill be considered by another committee. So they might think that perhaps the content of the bill is not necessarily as appropriate to the committee that it's been assigned to as it could be, and they might say there's a better committee to take on that role. They could report the bill to the floor with no recommendations. Again, Steve can corroborate this for me, but I would say that this almost never happens. But the thing that does happen most of all is that the bill is postponed indefinitely or it's held for further study. And the thing that we always want to emphasize is that I think that when a bill is held for further study, sometimes it kind of feels like it might be sentenced to purgatory, like it's just going to linger in this like weird liminal space in the committee and no one will ever hear from it again. But that's not the case. Oftentimes committees will hold bills for further study. They'll hold them all at the very beginning of the hearing, just so that they have time to really go over the testimony and make sure that all of the comments and all of the perspectives that residents and advocates and lobbyists are sharing, that the committee has the opportunity to really review those and make sure that the bill is the best that it can be. So like I said, bills are most often held for further study in one hearing. And then what'll happen is that during a second hearing, they'll be considered. So either the committee will vote on them or there will be something else that happens with the bill in a different hearing at a later date. And so I'm going to now toss it over to Steve to continue with our bill process, our Executive Director, Stephen Brown.
Thank you, Hannah, and thanks for getting us to the floor of the House and the Senate, which is a very important step in the process of having a bill become law. As Hannah mentioned, most times a bill does not get to the floor until a committee has considered it at least twice, had a hearing, and then had a separate meeting where they vote the bill out, either in its present form or in some amended form. Committees, once they send the bills out, they go on the floor calendar. Under the rules of the House and the Senate, the bills usually need to be put on the calendar for 48 hours in advance before the House or the Senate votes on it. So that's an important 48 hours. If it's a bill that you're interested in, you can be contacting your state legislator and advising them of your views. That's the time to do it once the bill has passed out of committee. After it gets on the floor, it will then be debated, discussed on the floor of the House or the Senate. It can be very quick. Many of the bills that the legislature passes are quite non-controversial. They get passed in literally a minute or less. For more controversial ones, though, there can often be very lengthy debate. In addition, there can be amendments introduced by individual legislators. And that's another important way of trying to get bills changed. If you don't particularly like the bill that passed, one of the things that legislators try to do and sometimes succeed is getting the bill amended on the floor of the House or the Senate to make it more palatable, or to address concerns that have arisen about language in the bill, for example, that may be ambiguous or that people have questions about. Individual amendments can be proposed, and then they will be voted on. The next step, assuming that I think we actually missed number 7. Yes. So this is something that's confusing to a lot of people. What often happens is that the same bill gets introduced on the House by a House sponsor and in the Senate by a Senate sponsor. The bills may be identical, but they have to go through the same process. So what often happens is in the middle of the session, you'll see the House pass a bill that maybe you're following, and you're glad to see it passed. And maybe right about the same time, the Senate passes the Senate version of that bill. So you think, oh, that's great. The House passed the bill, the Senate passed the bill. It's law, or it's going to the governor. And that's not how it works. Both chambers have to pass each other's bill in order for it to get to the governor. So until both houses have acted on the same bill, it's not passed. So what that means is that often the governor is being presented with identical versions of the same bill, 2 bills, one from the House, one from the Senate, identical, but they both have to go through this 2-chamber process in order to make it to the governor's desk. So that leads to the next and usually final process. Once the bill gets to the governor's desk, he has a period of time. It's between a week or 2 weeks, depending on the time of the session that it happens. He has a few options. He can sign the bill into law. He can not sign it, take no action on it, in which case, after a certain period of time, it automatically becomes law, or he can formally veto the bill. If he vetoes the bill, it then goes back to the legislature, where they can consider whether to override the veto. These past few years, vetoes have been relatively rare. I think usually when you have both a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature, they try to work things out in advance. So there aren't a lot of bills going to the governor's desk that they're prepared to veto. But that does happen. And in fact, earlier this session, I believe the legislature overrode 2 vetoes of bills that Governor McKee had made last year. So it does happen. And again, this is another chance for you to make your views known. If the legislature has passed a bill that you don't like, you have the opportunity to lobby the governor and urge him to veto it. By the same token, if a bill has passed that you do like and you want to make sure that he signs it into law, this is the opportunity for you to let the governor know that you support it and hope that he will do that and not veto it. So that's a very simple, quick 101 lesson in bills becoming law. And the thing I would just emphasize is, as we've talked about, there are various stages in the process where you have the opportunity to make your views known. And while Hannah emphasized testifying before committees, and she's going to go into a lot more detail in a minute with some tips on testifying, which is certainly the most productive way, I think, to make your views known. But don't sell short the other ways that you can also be engaged with your state representative or senator. They should welcome, I think they usually do welcome, hearing from their constituents. So if you have a position on a bill and you aren't going to be able to make it to a committee, you aren't going to be able to make it to the hearing, even by phone, you can give your legislator a phone call. You can email them. All that contact information is on the legislature's website, which again, Hannah will be getting to in a little while. And these are really important. I think a lot of people wonder, well, what's the point? You know, I write a letter, I send an email to my legislator, he or she isn't going to listen. And you'd be surprised how much they listen to people who are their constituents. You're a voter. They want your vote. So when they get an email or a call from a constituent, more often than not, they're going to respond, they're going to listen. And if it's on an issue that they may not have a firm opinion on, they're going to want to hear from you and maybe even take your views and make other people aware of them. What legislators will tell you is if they get just 5 letters, 5 emails that aren't canned emails, but they get 5, emails that clearly somebody has taken the time to write, that's a lot. They take those seriously. It's not as productive or effective to, do these sort of chain emails that all look alike. I also think it's fair to say that legislators will not be impressed unless you have some expertise in the matter. If you aren't in their district, you really ought to focus on your own legislators. But if you fit into that category, I would not in any way want to discourage you from engaging in the process, because you will be listened to. They may not always agree with you, but they almost certainly will try to engage you because, as I said, you're a constituent, they're supposed to be representing you, and they want to show that they're representing you.